Boots answers back. Oh! Wow! Right on the button!
All right, boxing fans, let's talk about it. Xander Zayas versus Jaron Boots Ennis. This will be the fight of the year when the Ring magazine decides to give out their awards. What a fight for boxing and what a night for boxing. How can you not forever be a Xander fan? How can you not give all the credit in the world to Xander at 23 years of age? Lacking that experience, he decides to take on the best fighter at 154, in my opinion, in Jaron Boots Ennis. Xander could have took a different route. Xander could have took a different path. Xander could have fought his mandatory for the WBO and the WBA, but no, he decided to test his skills, his talent, and his ability against Jaron Boots Ennis. And that's okay that Xander came up short. It's boxing. Now, Xander is going to take this experience back to the gym and come back more experienced, stronger, better, and with more ring IQ. If you guys noticed in that ring interview, I don't believe we're going to see Xander at the 154-pound division anymore. I believe Xander will move up to 160. Xander, in my opinion, had some minor weight issues. Weight drained, not heavy weight drained, but definitely I believe it's time to move up to 160. But if you guys noticed in that ring interview, he told Boots that go take over the 154-pound division. Go take over Undisputed. I believe we're going to see Xander at 160 in the future, and definitely sooner rather than later, a future champion at 160.
Boots, take over that 154 division. Congratulations once again. And man, you deserve everything.
Xander showed heart. Xander showed grit. And Xander fought the best fight that he can possibly fight for the experience that he had. And giving Xander that much more respect, giving Xander that much more credit, he told Jaron Boots Ennis in his ring interview, there's no excuses. It wasn't the experience. It wasn't the age. It wasn't the weight. Boots was the better fighter that night. You don't get many fighters who lose their O say that to a fighter who was plain and simply better than them. But Xander did exactly that. He gave all the credit in the world to Boots, beat him fair and square with no excuses. That is the prime example of a throwback fighter. Again, how can you not be forever a Xander fan? Now, there's many different things that Xander could have done in this fight. Again, lack of experience. Boots has the experience over him. Boots has far more tricks up his sleeve. Boots has a better style overall. And Boots has stepped in that ring and seen many more different styles over Xander Zayas. But Xander gave it his all, and I can respect it. I definitely would have liked to see, again, there was many different things that Xander could have done right, but lack of experience. I definitely would have liked to see Xander use more of his weight, having that weight advantage, him being the pressure fighter, him being the aggressor. I know that's not his style, but use that weight advantage. Also, Xander Zayas has one of the strongest fundamental basic boxing I have seen, and it's a part of his style. It works for him. I definitely would have liked to see Xander, use more of his feet. Xander uses, with his fundamentals, Xander uses the entire boxing ring. But I think Xander went into this fight with a different game plan and with a different mindset. He didn't want to be no pushover. He didn't want this smaller fighter being the aggressive fighter, and basically putting Xander in his place. I didn't think Xander wanted that type of performance, on his back or on his resume. So he decided to slug it out with a more experienced fighter. He decided, to push the pace when Boots was pushing the pace. Xander didn't want to be no pushover. Unfortunately, it didn't work in his favor. But again, you're taking this experience back to the gym, and this is the type of experience a young Xander Zayas needs. We're going to see him come back stronger with more ring experience and more ring IQ. But again, Xander showed heart, he showed grit, and again, he fought the best possible fight, that he could fight for the experience that he had. Once again, Xander going down in round 1. Xander going down in round 5 with, I believe, the most lethal uppercut I haven't seen in a fight and in the middle of an exchange. That uppercut was lethal by Jaron Boots Ennis. And then finally, Xander Zayas going down for the last time in the 7th round. Now, a lot of people say that Xander quit. I personally don't think that Xander quit. I seen a little bit of quit in him, but I don't think that Xander quit. I just thought Xander got, overwhelmed by the pressure. He got overwhelmed by Boots' style. He got overwhelmed, with the exchanges and with the fight overall. Again, not carrying that experience. And his team decided to throw in the towel, which I think was a smart move by Xander's corner, because Boots would have just started picking up the pace. I think we definitely would have seen Xander if the fight went on. We definitely would have seen Xander, down a couple more times, if not possibly knocked out. Either way, the rest of the 7th and going into the 8th, possibly. I didn't see the fight going into 9, 10, 11, or 12. I think the referee would have stopped it regardless. There was definitely no need, for Xander to take those type of shots. There is definitely no need for Xander to take those type, take that type of punishment. And, there was no need for Xander to get KO'd, officially. So I thought it was a good stoppage by his corner. Again, I just thought, it was a lot going into this fight for Xander, being overwhelmed, with Boots being the talent that he is. But Xander Zayas gave Jaron Boots Ennis a run for his money in the 3rd round. And that was the most trouble we've ever seen Boots in his career. And that was one of my biggest questions that we will get to soon. Xander Zayas, in my opinion, I thought had the opportunity to put Boots on his ass and give him his first 8 count. Not a knockout, not a stoppage, but Boots was shook up. Boots was on somewhat of Bambi legs, and we will get to that right now. Jaron Boots Ennis immediately getting that knockdown in the 1st round. He came out as the aggressive fighter. He came out establishing his beautiful jab. He came out, establishing his combinations, putting up the distance, where it's going to be, where they're going to be fighting in the ring, in the middle, in the center, on the ropes. He just came out with, the better overall game plan, experience, and the style. Boots' style is very creative. He has that slickness style. He has that showboat style, and it definitely works out in his favor sometimes. But again, he came out with a better game plan. Him being the more experienced fighter, came out the aggressive style. Like, we had some chess match fighting, about 30%, and then that 70% was just a complete slugfest. And, Boots, here was my question for Jaron Boots Ennis. Boots can be wide on the scorecards. We all know in already some cases, especially early, Boots is going to dominate this fight. Boots is going to win. It's possibly going to be a knockout or a stoppage. But my big question for Boots was, Boots puts himself in situations that he doesn't necessarily need to put himself in. I know Boots wants to make a statement, especially in a unified fight, especially against Xander. And, he wants that spotlight, which I personally think that, he deserves. Definitely right now, he belongs on that pound for pound list. Definitely, at the lower of that pound for pound list. But it's definitely time for him to get his spotlight. It's definitely time for him to get that shine. But my question was, Boots, he's not disciplined with his game plan. He definitely gets away from it. And he makes it a slugfest. He's rushing for the knockout. He's rushing for the stoppage. And he's rushing to make a statement, which actually worked in that favor. But my question was, is Jaron Boots Ennis going to have the same exact reaction, getting hit by a better fighter than a C-plus fighter? I think Xander is a B-plus fighter. Showed a lot of heart, showed a lot of grit. But Boots was never shook up when he's rushing for the knockout, for the stoppage against a C-plus fighter. How is he going to look in those exchanges? Is he going to have the same reaction when a fighter like Xander hits him? When a fighter like Xander lands a big shot? And it wasn't the same reaction. Boots was shook up. We've seen Boots on Bambi legs, somewhat of Bambi legs, and I thought Xander had a real opportunity to give Boots his first 8 count in his career. But man, Boots showed heart. He showed grit. He was willing to make it a slugfest, and it worked out for him in his favor. Again, Boots gets away from his game plan. You know, sometimes he's undisciplined when he doesn't need to, when the scorecards are wide. You know, the knockout's going to come, but just keep chopping them down more and more and try not to rush for it, because as we've seen in the 3rd round, it's a perfect example of, you know, just keep breaking them down, and it will come. But Boots, 100% of the time, likes to rush for the knockout, likes to rush for the stoppage, and he's not disciplined, and he gets away from his game plan. And sometimes, you know, it can't work out for him. It didn't in the 3rd, but overall, in the overall fight, it definitely worked out for him, and he made a statement. So all the credit to Jaron Boots Ennis. Came out establishing his jab, being the aggressive fighter, you know, having the better highlight shots, you know, out of those exchanges. Overall, Boots being a 2-time unified world champion. So all the credit to Jaron Boots Ennis. Now, Oscar De La Hoya.
Boots Ennis, what a great fight. You are a machine. Zayas, a little inexperienced, but you will be back. You're a great fighter. Let's make the biggest fight in boxing today. Virgil Ortiz, Boots Ennis, let's go.
Making a statement saying that he wants to see some unfinished business that we didn't get at 147. Jaron Boots Ennis versus Virgil Ortiz. Now it's been some time because Boots and Oscar De La Hoya, you know, have been, you know, a little hot-headed towards each other, and Virgil Ortiz has been sitting out. So I would assume, at least for the most part, that it is resolved between Oscar De La Hoya and Virgil Ortiz, but it's about that time we see Virgil Ortiz back in the ring. Ring activity is the most important thing when it comes to this sport, when it comes to boxing. So it's definitely wow past due to see Virgil back in the ring. Again, some unfinished business that we didn't get at 147. I believe this is a better matchup at 154 because of the weight anyway. So I would definitely like to see Jaron Boots Ennis versus Sebastian Fundora. I personally believe that fight needs to happen first in a unification fight. We have the WBC, the WBO, and the WBA up for grabs out in Las Vegas. I would like to see that fight first, but I would not be mad if Boots versus Virgil Ortiz takes place first. Let me know your guys' thoughts. Let me know what you guys think about the fight. Let me know where you guys think Xander goes from here. Again, I personally believe that Xander is going to the 160-pound division based off his interview. He told Boots, go take over the 154-pound division. You know, go take over undisputed and do your thing at 154. And again, with Xander pretty much giving Boots all the credit in the world, pretty much saying that he was the better fighter and there's no excuses. So again, you have to give all the credit in the world to Xander Zayas too as well. But let me know what you guys think. Let me know, would you rather see Boots fight Ortiz, or would you rather see Boots fight Fundora? I'll catch you guys in the next one. I'm out.